Hello everyone, so for this process, I'm using raw sienna and burnt umber to create our quick sketch. And once we already identified our subject and we already have our quick sketch, so we can begin with our underpainting. So basically on this process, we need to identify the basic tones na gusto nating i-achieve sa painting natin. So this will set our foundation before starting with the details. So the palette that we're using for our crushing waves, we're using turquoise blue. We also have ultramarine, lead white, and we're using also a little bit of yellow and also green tones. So for this process, as you can see, I'm using a small palette knife. So basically I'm trying to scrub out excess paint. So this will expose the underpainting tone, which is the raw sienna. I'm creating a small sketch for the highlights using my palette knife. Using palette knife is also very useful if you want to create a beautiful texture. So if you want to apply a thick paint, we call it impasto. So you can use a palette knife to do this technique. So for the underpainting, it is very important not to use very quickly yung brightest tone natin for white. So all of the whites that you can see right now are not pure white. So I'm mixing a little bit of raw sienna and blue to hold back a little bit. So we're trying to reserve the brightest white that we have for the highlights, and that will be applied for the finishing touches. Naturally, yung texture ng oil paint natin is like toothpaste. So it's a little bit thick. So for us to apply thin layers, you can mix the oil paint with a little bit of linseed oil or turpentine so that you can create smooth and thin layers of paint for smooth details. But for the natural texture, which is paste consistency, it is perfect to apply it using palette knife to apply thick layers and impasto techniques. So for you to create a little bit rough and a little bit more texture impasto effect, you can also try to, on my case I'm using plaster. I'm using it together with the oil paint to create impasto or more thick effect. But it is advisable to use impasto medium or some sort of oleo gel para mas kumapal yung oil paint natin. One of the advantage of using oil medium, medyo matagal matuyo ang oil paint. So you have a lot of time to mix all of those colors using your brush. At first, I thought that oil paint will be the same with acrylic paint when it comes to application. But then I figured out na there's a little bit difference when it comes to application. Usually kasi kapag ka sa acrylic, you are able to easily, kapag ka hindi mo gusto yung underpainting, you can easily just cover it with another color. But when you're using oil paint, it's a little bit different. So you need to be precise as much as possible for that particular area. So if you want it to be blue, you need to make sure that you will use blue for that surface. Kasi medyo matagal ngang matuyo yung oil paint. So kapag ka nagkamali ka ng color sa underpainting, it will take time before matabunan mo siya ng susunod na color. So as much as possible, you need to make sure that the underpainting will be as is, or most probably malapit dun sa final tone na gusto mong i-achieve for that particular surface or area. So for you guys na nagtatanong kung pwede bang paghaluin yung acrylic and oil paint in a single artwork or with the same platform, like on this case that I'm doing right now. So basically yung base paint naman natin, which is latex paint or gesso, those medium are also water based. So technically for the underpainting, you can use acrylic first to identify or to create the underpainting, and then for the final details, that is the time that you can use the oil paint. So technically, yes, you can combine acrylic or water base with oil paint as long as the first layer, which is the acrylic, is already dry. This stage, I'm trying to create more details and texture dito sa rock natin. So on this rock formation, we're already applying the highlights and also the depths and shadows. So as you can see, yung light source natin is coming from the left hand side. So the light source is from the left going to the right. So basically all of the shadows should be located somewhere on the right hand side. It is very important to identify where your light source is coming from para hindi tayo nalilito kung saan ilalagay yung highlights and shadows. So this is very important, especially if you want to create more depths and also to create 3D effect, and also as much as possible to make it as realistic as possible using those two elements, which is the highlights and the shadows. So just for comparison, so I noticed that when it comes to oil paint, it is really hard to create vibrant or more lively colors. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, if you're using acrylic paint, and if you're using white, so you can see that na talaga madali ka makakapag-produce ng talagang very bright white, very bright yellow, same with other colors. But when it comes to oil paint, somehow I'm not quite sure if it's about the brand of the oil paint, but I found out that when it comes to oil paint, it's a little bit let's say hindi siya ganun ka-sharp yung mga colors that it could produce. So for example, if you were using white, so it's a little bit darker compared to the acrylic white that you can use. And just to compare, so I tried to search for it, so how or what is the specific color or white tone that I can use to provide or to reach that effect na talagang bright white siya. So I found out that titanium white is the brightest white tone that you can produce in oil paint. So basically, lead white is a little bit let's say off-white compared to titanium. So might as well it might be helpful if you will reserve titanium white for the final highlights or for the brightest tones. But for the underpainting, siguro we can use lead white, and then for the final touches, that is the time that you can use the titanium white for the brightest white. So to give you a color guide kung ano-ano yung mga colors na makikita nyo the way it is right now on our painting. So I will try to provide you the information, and we will try to identify those colors that is already on the canvas, and this might serve as your guide kung ano-ano yung mga kulay na ginamit ko, and hopefully this you will find this very useful. So at this point, I'm using a round pointed brush to create this waves foam. So these are white foams, yung mga bubbles, small bubbles natin that is creating white lines sa waves. And again, this is not pure white. So still I'm mixing a little bit of raw sienna and blue so that this is not pure white. as a beginner, it is very important to be open-minded. If there are other people who are, already had their professional training, and if they're willing to, share some ideas and techniques on how to properly do it. So yeah, it is very important to, consider those advice. So on my case, well, I'm really blessed with people who are willing to share their ideas, and yeah, that is why it is very important to be teachable. And even if you think that you're good enough, you will still meet someone who is better than you and ahead of you when it comes to techniques and skills. So it is very important to learn from them to improve your on how you do things. So I think that would be all. So these are I think some of the basic things that you need to learn and familiarize when it comes to using oil paint. So again, this is only simple guide and a basic foundation. You can still find more informative and more detailed way on how to use oil paint. So but at least this will provide you idea on what are the basic information that you need to be familiarized with. So if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. So simply search Mauzuu Customs, and basically I will be sharing all of the information and basic things that I experience along the way as I use and try different mediums. And I will share on what are my personal review with specific mediums, and as much as possible share as much information that might be useful. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I really hope you enjoyed the process. And personally, I enjoyed this process, trying this new technique and using this oil medium. So hopefully this is very helpful for you to to understand the basic things that you need to know about oil. And yeah, thank you, and see you on my next video.